Welcome to the Rebel Rebel. I'm your host, Michael Dargie. The Rebel Rebel is a show dedicated to creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. It's a love letter to those people who think audaciously and act courageously in service of making the world a better and more interesting place. Thank you to Make More Creative for helping produce this show and sharing it across the world. We are in 75 countries now. 75. We are growing. Thank you so very much. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all this stuff. It helps us more than you know. Hey, if you're a creative rebel with a story to tell or you know one, head on over to the RebelRebelPodcast.com, fill out the guest request form. Who knows? You might be the next guest on our show. We'd love to hear from you. And while you're there, why don't you head on over to the shop and pick up some of our great merch? We've got these amazing shirts. Look, there's an amazing shirt right there. And we got coffee cups. You don't even have to put coffee in it. You can put tea in it. You can put milk in it. You could dunk a cookie. You could grow a plant. You could put whiskey. I don't know. Who knows what you're going to do? You're a rebel. I'm not the boss of you. Now, if you'd like to help the show in other ways, you can always sponsor us. You can advertise on the show. Send us a note to studio@therebelrebelpodcast.com. On today's show, we've got Jannette Anderson from BODACITY.CA. She's a digital nomad. She helps maturepreneurs and expertpreneurs do their thing. She is awesome. She's a firecracker. You are going to love her. Without further ado, please welcome Jannette Anderson to the Rebel Rebel. Across the world, it's actually just down the hall from me in C Space at Marda Loop, I've got Jannette Anderson. Jannette, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. I'm really happy to be here and be in your space. It's really creative.
Yeah, isn't it lovely?
It is.
Yeah, you're high atop Marda Loop, Calgary, in what we call the treehouse at C Space Marda Loop. And it's so nice that we were able to actually do this in person, but apart in a weird sort of way.
It is a digital Zoom world, no matter what we try and do.
Yeah, no matter what. But we did get to have a coffee and a Diet Coke together, which was nice.
Yes.
Hey, so Jannette, if you could, why don't you catch us up with all things Jannette Anderson and what you're up to right now, and then we'll do some time travel.
All right. Well, let's see. Okay. Right now, I am in Calgary, Alberta, for probably the longest stretch I've been anywhere for a while. I'm here for 5 months. It's the first time in 3 years I've unpacked all 3 of my suitcases. I live, I call myself polyhomourous. I live a mobile lifestyle. I decided after listening to my own whining for way too many years that I really, really am pathologically allergic to winter. So I try not to be here when it's, yucky. And because I have an online business and work with people from all around the world, I can be anywhere in the world. So why not be somewhere nice with palm trees and a swimming pool? Yeah. So I tend to head somewhere warmer in the winter. This year, I won't be leaving till January, and I'm a little bitter about it. And, when it snows, you'll probably hear the air get blue around Calgary when I'm muttering and swearing. So what else is new with me is I'm actually right now just launching my Wings Academy. It's my 6-month program that supports women in creating what I call their revenue runway. So it is a really cool program that I created as part of what I call industry rehab. There's a lot of things in our expertpreneur online world that I actually think we're taking more people out of entrepreneurship than we're putting in. So I'm kind of here to see if we can't reverse that trend. And so this program is part of that. It's part of helping people actually get ROI from a program that they're in, which is kind of not always the case. Soon I will be heading south for the Marketers Cruise and then other wonders beyond that. And I am really excited about making a shift into really focusing on maturepreneurs. That's what I'm ramping up right now. I just had one podcast go out. Like I've been doing it for 3 years, but only on YouTube and in my Facebook group. And finally it occurred to me, there are bigger audiences to be had. So we went out to Apple and Spotify and so on. But I'm also launching a new podcast in the new year called the Maturepreneur Podcast. And I'm excited about that because there's this amazing trend that's going on in the world. I call it the rise of the maturepreneur. And there's just tons of opportunities there. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, maturepreneurs are the way.
Yes, they
This is
are.
the way.
Absolutely.
Well, so I did mention, I did promise time travel in this
Yes.
episode. So let's go back in time if we could, because what I'd like to understand is where you're coming from. Like, what is it along the Jannette Anderson story that caused you to go this way when everybody was maybe going that way?
Okay, well, I'm going to take you way back then because
Yeah.
when I was 4, almost 5,
Mhm.
I really wanted the book Heidi. I grew up with lots of turmoil and drama and trauma and alcoholism and violence and so forth, and mostly as an only child. So I kind of, books became my refuge. And I really, 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 I don't know why, wanted the book Heidi. And I begged my mom over and over and over, as only a really determined Aries child can. Can I have it now? How about now? Can we get it now? Please, mom, can we get it? Please, please, please. How about now? How about now? This went on for a few weeks. And finally, one day she turned around and yelled, "No, we can't afford it." And I was shocked, but I wasn't shocked by what she said. I heard that all the time. I
Yeah.
grew up with that. What I was shocked by was the look on her face. And even though I was 5, I remember viscerally to this day, Michael, the look of shame and sadness and frustration and just despair on her face that she couldn't say yes to buying a book that was probably $1. And I remember to this day deciding at that point that I never wanted to see that look on another person's face, not on hers, not on mine, not on any other person or woman's face.
Yeah.
And that then translated into my why. I'm called the Why Whisperer. And my why is that I want to support people in having a yes life, saying yes to being who they are, doing what they want to do, and having what they want to have, instead of living out of the no's, the not enoughs, and the BS stories around that. And I think I came out of the womb entrepreneurial. I'm pretty sure I was carrying a briefcase when I was born, which did not make my mom happy.
No.
And so, kids don't overcomplicate the crap out of stuff. So mom said no money. Therefore, the solution is get money, right? Problem solution. Yep. So I decided I was going to have a business. So I told my mom, okay, I will have a business and we'll fix it. And she just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. And so I had seen people in our housing tenement, complex, have a garage sale a few weeks before. So one day when she was at work, she worked probably 3 jobs and someone was probably supposed to be watching me. I dragged everything I could out of the house, small appliances, knickknacks, my toys, whatever I could sell. I priced it all and I could count money before I could talk, I think. And so I had this garage sale and I was so proud, Michael. She came home. I ran up and I remember again to this day, $13.72, Mom, look. That was a lot of money. Yeah. And I said, so now can we get the book? Problem, solution, right?
Oh,
we need money, we got money. And she didn't quite see it the way I did. So the short version of the story is I got spanked. She took my money. She made me go back and buy back what I could. So I got most of our household stuff back, but kids wouldn't sell me my toys back. So I lost most of my toys. And I didn't get the book, at least right away. And so many people would say that wasn't a very successful first entrepreneurial venture, but I actually think it was because I learned some really important things. I learned, 1, never go into business with family. I'm kind of, but not really. Number 2 is we can take our destiny into our own hands with business. If you have a problem, you can create a solution to it. And entrepreneurship is a key to being able to do that, to take your destiny into your own hands. So I have been passionate about business and entrepreneurship since then. And literally stayed on that path. I had my first franchise when I was 7, and I had a lemonade stand, and I could see 3 other corners that were really busy that they couldn't get to me and I couldn't get to them. So I went home. Later that day, I got the other 3 TV trays out of the set. If you're old enough, you'll remember what I'm talking about. and recruited 3 friends, made signs for them, got my mom to make us lemonade, put them on the other 3 corners, and then we split their money 50-50. I got 50 for the product and they got 50 for doing the work. So that was really my first franchise. Wow. And then my first business with an employee was I had a daycare during the summer for kids while their parents were at work. And my first employee, I was 11, he was 9-year-old. I used to babysit. And I remember making them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day for several months. But they liked it. So I think my mom forced me to make bologna sandwiches a few times. But I still remember I charged $3 a day per kid. I paid him $1 an hour. I made good money from that first business. So I think entrepreneurialism is a great key for expressing our purpose, our why, and profiting ourselves and others from doing that. So I've been supporting entrepreneurs since then. Basically, I've had 4 iterations of my business since then, because every once in a while I forget and lose my mind and go back into corporate. And I'm there for a couple of years. And then I go, oh, I remember why I hate this. Politics and bureaucracy and bullshit. Oh my, let me out of here. And so I go back and start my business again. But it's been in the realm of marketing. And so I had a marketing agency. I had an event planning firm. I had a marketing training company, and do training and coaching and so forth now. Marketing strategy, sales, business development. Yeah. So that's kind of how I came to be on this journey and why I still love it, and why I think it's really a path to creating more freedom and expression, and actually really being a way to make a change. And specifically, then one more little kind of update. About 10 years ago, I got a download during a meditation. And I wrote out 11 pages of notes in my journal about this thing called BODACITY. And the mission statement is shifting the world from fear to love, one happy and empowered woman at a time. And it was about a mindset and a community and a global movement. 11 pages. And I read it and I literally closed the book and said, why are you telling me this, universe? This is not mine. And so I then spent about 6 or 8 years in resistance and rebellion. And I'd get the call from the universe and I'd say, but I don't even really like women. Go away. And I'd hang up, right? And then I'd get the call and I'd be like, there's so many women's groups. Back when there was 4, now there's 4 million, right? I'd get the call again. And it's like, okay, fine. Just leave me alone. That was my version of gracious surrender. Probably involved more swearing, and I finally stepped in. And of course, when we go all in, then we get lots of clarity. So then I understood, why me? Why now? Why women? And so I think a lot of it is just about shifting the world from fear to love, creating an alternative to the patriarchy, which doesn't work for anyone, including old white men, and finding new ways to do business that can be collaborative and co-creative and productive in so many ways. So a lot of it really is about empowering more women to step into their purpose, their profit, their passion. And when they're happy and productive, then so are the men, so are the kids, so is the planet. So that's basically what I've been up to.
Wow.
There's been a lot of other stuff in the meantime, traveling around the world by myself, ziplining in 4 countries, diving with great whites, and a variety of other things. But yeah, I've had a pretty storied life.
Well, that's amazing. Okay, so let's just take a little side tour here and be like, what's one of your favorite places to visit or to travel to, or to live in, for that matter?
Well, the living is hard because I haven't seen everywhere yet, so I'm not sure where my place is yet.
From what you've seen so far.
Of what I've seen so far. Well, different things for different reasons. So I love Guatemala, and Antigua is a pretty little town. I really love Latin culture. So Central and South America, I really love that. I've had some amazing peak experiences at different places. And so I appreciate them for that. I think my favorite place in nature in the world is Iguazu Falls, which is down by Brazil and Argentina and Uruguay or Paraguay. I can never remember which one's on the bottom. And Iguazu Falls is like incredible. If you've ever seen the Canadian Falls, if you multiply that by about 15, that's what Iguazu Falls is. And I like, the people of South Africa are amazing. And I have never been in a country where the entire country had PTSD. Well, actually not Bolivia, but besides that. And yet they are the fastest to joy of any people that I've met. So there's lots of different things in different places that I really love and appreciate, but I mostly love, going south and butchering the Spanish language and trying really hard to, salsa better and stuff like that.
Now, when you say salsa, do you mean dance or do you mean like make salsa?
Both.
A bit of both.
I'm working on perfecting both.
Yeah, very nice. Those are very aspirational. I love that.
Yeah.
And something I've always found in my travels is people genuinely enjoy you trying to speak the native language. That's not always true. There's some places where it's not like that, like Quebec, for example.
Yes.
They tend not to feel strongly about our efforts to.
Yeah. Well, and France is quite similar too, because they and Brazil, because even if the words are close in Spanish and Portuguese, they will pretend that they don't know what you're saying, even if it's like really, really similar. But other than that, they really appreciate when you try. Although I have left quite a few with some puzzled looks on their face, so I have no idea what I said.
You need that. Like Google has got this thing now, and it's an app on my phone, and it's not like Google Translate, but it's like that, but it happens real time, so you can actually speak, and it'll translate into the language that you want to speak in. It's really cool.
Yeah,
we're in this crazy new world.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
BODACITY.CA is where people can learn more about that adventure.
Yeah.
And I guess another question I have, like, I do love this idea of shifting away from the patriarchy. And I don't even, I mean, this just sort of popped into my head. Have you seen the Barbie the movie?
Not yet. Actually, I was going to go with some friends and they went when I was out of town. So I will catch it at some point before it leaves. Yeah, I've heard so really many reviews about it. It's quite funny.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to, go in with just an open mind and some joy in your heart to, don't put it on a pedestal, but see it for what it is.
Yeah.
But I like this idea of, and I guess what's been the response from women as you've, worked towards sort of helping them show up maybe differently?
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. It's interesting because younger generations think that there isn't an issue anymore. And, so no, it's okay. We don't need feminism, or we don't need to fix the system. It's not broken. It's like, well, I still consider 80% on the dollar that a man earns for the same job still broken. It's up from 60 cents, but it's still only at 80% or 80 cents. And that's if you're a white woman. If you're a Latino, it goes down to 50 cents on the dollar. And so younger women, if I say that, they just kind of look at me, tilt their head and mentally pat me on the head. I think women who are a little older, in their 40s plus, get that they want more self-expression. They want more meaning in their life. They, often go through that whole process of, and not just women. Who am I if I'm not my whatever? I'm not a full-time mom. I'm not my job. I'm not my whatever. Lots of people went through that process, especially in COVID, when lots of things went away and weren't the way they were. Who am I if I'm not what I know? And so when it comes to that opportunity / crisis to redefine yourself, who are you? And where does your value come from? And I think there's a big trend now, and a lot of in general, in my experience, most women struggle with owning their value, struggle with self-promotion. There's lots of things in our society that still, have us not be seen or heard. So there's still some work to overcome that with people. Of course, not just women, but it is systemically more geared towards women. So there's a lot of work to do to get them to have that internal sense of confidence and willingness to come forward and say, yes, here I am, and I have value to offer you, and here's what it is, and let me help you, because they have the heart to help. They just may not have the skills in terms of self-promotion, sales, and marketing. That's where there's lots of resistance.
Yeah.
And, as I mentioned, as we change, our demographic changes. Often our demographic is us, right? And so not too long ago, I became aware of this phenomenon that I was blissfully ignorant of prior to that. I was on the Marketers Cruise. We had been talking about that before. And I was talking to a group of gentlemen at something called Pizza and Profits for networking. Someone had asked me, what do you do? I turned around. I was replying. I was mid-sentence through the first sentence. He turned and started talking to someone else. I thought, well, that's kind of rude. And so I thought, well, okay, he's a dick. I'll just move on. And so I left that group and went to another group. And I'm talking to them. Someone says, so tell me about you. And so I started answering. Same thing happened. Turns and starts talking to someone else. And I thought, okay, so obviously not everyone's a dick. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not showing up. Maybe I'm not, my energy is low, or I'm not really being present. So I checked in and it's like, no, that's not it. I tend to be pretty visible. I have blue hair and polka dotted glasses and so forth. So I tend not to be invisible in a crowd. So then I just started watching and being curious. Every one of the women that was over 60 years old, that every one of them was completely and utterly ignored. I was at a dinner table with 8. There was 2 down at the end. No one talked to them through the whole meal. And so I started to go, well, this is the thing. I'll be dipped. And so that's how I became aware of ageism. Prior to that, I was not. And so when that is combined with sexism, it is actually really challenging for older women to be entrepreneurs, or more challenging than for most entrepreneurs. Yeah. You can't get insurance, you can't get funding, you can't get loans, because if you go into a bank when you're 65 and say, I'd like to get a 10-year loan, they think you're crazy and that you're going to, go break a hip, or, you should be off knitting or whatever. Our traditional stereotypes are of maturepreneurs and or of seniors or older people. And that used to be true. People used to be happy to retire at 65. Yeah. Now they've got another 20, 30, 40 years to live. And they don't want to spend all that time knitting and golfing. And they've still got a lot to contribute.
That's stuff to do.
And they, in many cases, so I find it's about 50-50, well, a little more than 50-50, they can't afford to retire, or they can't afford to retire because they don't want to get bored and
Yeah, they're not done yet.
Yeah, they're hashtag not done by a long shot.
Yeah.
So now I'm really having fun with kind of exploring that whole field. And it's fascinating because there's millions, literally millions, coming into the entrepreneurial field. I think it's going to actually shift demographically around the world, where it's going to shift how we do business, how we think of the aging process, what happens with business. And those entrepreneurs need to learn how to do business, because most of them come up through the entrepreneurial and corporate ranks.
Yeah.
They need to work on change and risk and change resistance and things like that. Huh. But it's a huge opportunity. I was talking to a woman yesterday who's she's an advocate for mental health awareness, especially related to drugs and suicide. And she's 66. And she was telling me about wanting to speak, and we were talking about what kind of business she wanted to build. And I said, okay, so you're 66. So how soon do you want to accomplish these goals? How much more do you have in you? Do you, want to fast track this or what? She said, yeah, I really want to go hard for, and I'm expecting her to say 2 more years, 3 more years, right?
Yeah.
I'm still trained in the old way of thinking. She says, I really want to go hard, only want to go hard for another 10 years. And then I want to slow down a bit. Right. And I did what she did. I kind of laughed. And
That's
We really
awesome.
have to shift our mindset.
Yeah.
And she will. Like she is just a ball of fire, and
Yeah.
she will go hard for 10 more years, and then she'll carry on, but she'll slow down a bit, right?
Man,
You know,
yeah.
all
Well,
things being equal.
she sounds like a
So,
caution.
I think there is some amazing things that are going to start happening, and shifts that we're going to start seeing in really reimagining what does it mean to be a human being on the planet
Yeah.
now that we're going to be on the planet functional and contributing for 100 years, because we're getting there in terms of science and medicine and so forth and so
Yeah.
on. So we really have to start thinking about
What's
reinventing ourselves more consciously.
Yeah, well, and I think what's interesting, and I love that point, by the way. This is because I do feel that, we're kind of, I feel like I'm at the halfway point, maybe, which is really nice. It's a nice feeling. But I
Yeah.
did hear on the news recently that in the USA that the actual life expectancy has dropped quite
Mm,
significantly,
truly.
um, which I think is fascinating, because I hope that that means that there's going to be a rebound. And I think
Mm,
there's a lot to do with stress, a lot to do with lifestyle, a lot to do with, all this other stuff that happens, in North American society that I think we just need to be cautious of, you know,
mhm.
because elsewhere in the world, we don't live the way that we live here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I mean,
Exactly.
you've traveled,
Yes. Yes.
blue
Well,
zones are like the dream, right?
exactly. And, there's more kind of awareness around that. There's a Netflix special called something about 100 years, that's about the growing trend of people that are living to be centenarians. Is that what it's
Wow.
called?
Centaurs.
Um,
I
100
want
years
to have
old.
horse legs. Come
Yeah,
on.
not not centaurs.
Cent-
Yeah, and
Centurions. Oh, those are like Romans, I think.
yeah,
Whatever.
exactly. That's right.
I understand what you're saying, though.
Yes. Um, and yeah, we don't do that here because of our lifestyle. But even here, I think, medical and technological advancements will start to overcome our stupidity, even in that regard.
Let's hope so. I'm on
Yeah.
board. I love this. This is so great. Hey, so Jeanette is like walking down the street, minding her own business, doing stuff that Jeanette does. She's got a skip in her step, and she, like waves at a cute dog, and she's thinking to herself, I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yes.
Boy, I sure wish that people knew this. What is the thing that you wish people knew?
Oh, that's easy. But I'd probably be more likely to be waving at a cute guy. But anyway, I would. That's actually pretty easy. My kind of purpose or mission statement or whatever is that I want people to get. I want you to get that you matter and live like you do. And the reason for that is I always wanted to matter. I wanted to get on the list. Growing up with the chaos and the addictions and so forth, not so much with the being first on the list or even sometimes on the list.
Right.
And so I grew up seeing that in other people, that they didn't get that they mattered, and the pain of that and the challenge of that and the limitation that that creates. So when we get that and we live that way, like, when we get that you are the only you can be the difference that you can be. No
Right.
one else can make that difference in the world. Not now, not ever. And when we start living like that, then I think there's a lot more richness, a lot more love, a lot more being aligned and on track. And it's better for everyone around us too, and it's better for the world. So I would want you to get that you matter.
I love that. Damn. Thank you. That's so nice. I feel like that. Oh, I love it. Okay. So, that was fantastic. The y- y- you say that you unpacked 3 suitcases,
Mm-hmm.
like all three. So, what's it like being nomadic in that way? Like, and what's your favorite thing to unpack when you find a new place?
There's I can't say that on this.
Sure, you can. It's a rebel rebel. You can
It
say
popped
whatever
to
you want.
mind is something that would probably be on a different kind of podcast. Anyway, so the there's pros and cons to every lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
People who don't live it envy the travel and so forth and think it's very glamorous. One of the biggest challenges is the disruption, especially to business, because it takes time to land and get
Yeah.
settled and acquainted with the new space and plugged in technically and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's fun because I get to see new places, meet new people, be where I want to be. The thing that a lot of people don't tell you about a mobile lifestyle is there's two really big factors. Well, three counting the disruption. Two really big factors that you have to actually attend to, or it gets to be very difficult. One is what I call decision fatigue. Well, I don't just call it that, it's a thing. And if people have to make too many decisions, they start to make bad decisions. And they've
Oh.
tested it scientifically and so forth. And if people are taxed with too many decisions, then they just give up. They don't care. And they just say whatever. And so if you live a mobile lifestyle where everything is a choice, how long am I going to be here? Where am I going to go next? Where am I going to live? What kind of, etc. You get decision fatigue. And so, like, for instance, right now, I'm trying to decide where to go for this winter. I was going to go to the Bahamas and try living there and see what that was like. Reached out to some friends who had lived on the islands and said, what do you think? What do you recommend? Basically, they said, no, don't go. The crime, they don't tell you how bad the crime is. The crime's pretty bad. And it's super expensive for food and stuff because it's an island and I wouldn't recommend it. And this is a person who's traveled a lot. So if she says it's not safe, then, it's not safe. I travel lots of places. I travel everywhere by myself. And I don't have an experience of being unsafe in the world. I think that you get what you expect and what you put out, and you can't be stupid. You can't be stupid anywhere in downtown Calgary or downtown Guatemala, right?
Sure.
So I think decision fatigue is a real thing. So you have to actually restrict the number of decisions you have to make. So put some structure in place and decide, I'm going to be here from this period to that period, things like that. Otherwise, it tends to lead to a lot of apathy or a lot of just kind of effetness, right? And that's not good for any kind of discipline or focus. The other thing is you can get extraordinarily lonely. And the reason is if you are not good at landing and plugging into a community, which you have to develop the skill to be able to do that, if you're going to do a mobile lifestyle, then that can be really difficult. So you have to get good at being somewhere quickly, but plugging into existing communities there. So communities of interest. If you're an expat, people like hanging out with expats. Yeah. I personally like going and doing cultural things in the country and meeting the locals as opposed to the expats. If I wanted to hang around Americans, I'd stay in America. But it's also good to plug into the expat community to get recommendations and referrals and here's a good hairdresser and that kind of thing. And you have to make extra efforts to stay connected to people at home because out of sight, out of mind, both ways. You're having adventures. They're not. You go back. You kind of don't really relate as much anymore. And there can be a real, even though you still love each other, there can be a sense of disconnection and not really getting each other anymore. So because the lifestyle's so different, and most people don't live it. So it's something that you gotta take into account and figure out ways to get your love needs met. If you're traveling with someone that's less challenging, I have just found out that there is a dating site for digital nomads, so I will be checking that out. I suspect most of them, the vast majority, are under 30 because a lot of digital nomad lifestyle people are young.
Lucky you.
There's a whole growing sector, and especially of women over 60, because they don't have partners and so forth, that are traveling and living in other countries. So I think it's a very interesting way to get an education about the world. Mm-hmm. I think it's fun. It can be more cost effective because almost everywhere else is cheaper to live. Dependent, right? Like, especially if you're going into third world countries and like Central America, South America, that kind of thing. You go to Europe, it's not cheaper. But it also can be really rich in experiences if you do them. So the other problem is it can get easy to get isolated and just work, right? Yeah.
Oh, for
especially if
sure.
you love your work. And so I make it a point to go out and do things like ziplining or, go take a dance class or a cooking class or
Or swim with
something.
sharks.
Yeah, swim with sharks. It did that twice, 3 times now.
Sharks are
Because
great.
otherwise you're living what looks like a story life, but you're not really.
Yeah.
You're not really experiencing the stories that
Yeah.
make it the rich experience. So that's the other thing, because it's easy to be in a rut, beside the pool in Mexico, as it is to be in, Southwest Calgary.
Sure.
So you got to
Yeah.
be careful not to have the appearance of growth and, an interesting life versus the reality of it.
Right.
So those are some of the things I would tell people about a digital lifestyle. And it takes quite a bit of planning.
Mhm.
And you have to be pretty brave. You don't have to be an extrovert. I know lots of people think, well, that's great, you're extroverted. I'm actually an introvert by nature and an extrovert by training. But it does help you actually connect to people if you're willing to talk to them when you
Yeah.
travel to other places.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Um, what, do you read a lot?
Uh,
And do you have like what's a book that you would recommend others to read? Could be fiction, nonfiction, could be whatever you like.
Okay. Well, I actually, if I'm driving, because I sometimes drive to Florida or Phoenix or Mexico or whatever, because I like long drives, I listen to audiobooks. So I've listened to lots and lots of them.
Nice.
Okay, I'm listening right now to Grant Cardone 10X.
Oh,
And if it was a physical book, I'd probably throw it about every 15 minutes of reading it, because he's quite obnoxious. But there are some good, inspiring comments and thoughts and approaches in there.
yeah.
It's a way to expand your thinking. I just don't like him and his style, but that's
I
okay.
feel, I feel you.
I love the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle. I think it's a fabulous book for reminding people of who we really are. And yeah, it's just so well written. I love that book. A couple of business books that I've been loving lately is $100 Million Offers and $100 Million Leads by I can never remember not Horowitz, something. Um,
Yeah.
I can find it.
I keep hearing the name of that book over and over again. So it's on
Yeah.
my list of ones to buy.
And you know what? The title kind of put me off because I thought it's going to be another one of these
Yeah.
people standing in front of their leased for the day Lamborghini,
Yeah.
in front of a mansion they don't own, talking about how millions of dollars, etc. But he actually is quite legit, and or at least certainly seems to be, and his business model is quite interesting. He gives a ton of value for free, and then
Yeah.
he invests in businesses that he takes from 3 million to 30 million, 300 million, etc.
Wow.
And it's got lots of good content for people who are in the digital marketing space, in the online world, anybody. And if you're I don't care what you're doing, if you're a brick and mortar building your business, manufacturing widgets, you're in the online world.
Yeah.
And so you got to get an online strategy. And
Yeah.
so they're helpful for most businesses, but certainly for businesses like me and people I work with, expertpreneurs who are selling what we know, a lot of good content in those two.
That's
So I'd
amazing.
recommend them. And
I love it.
I like him. He strikes me as very down to earth, and I like that. I
Yeah.
like
I
that in
love
my billionaires.
that. Who doesn't? uh, so I have two questions left for you.
Sure.
Question number one, and this is a fairly new thing, is that if you had the wish list of somebody that you'd like to listen to on the Rebel podcast, who would that be? Who should I reach out to and get on the show?
Him, which is why I really wish I could remember his name.
I will find it and put it in the links, and I will
Okay.
reach out.
I am looking at it right now. But
Right.
anyways,
We can cut around it.
so seriously. Okay, Alex Hormozy. That's his name.
Okay,
It's
so
not
I'll ask
Horowitz, it's Hormozy.
I will ask the question again. So here's the question.
Yes.
If you could have, if you listen to anybody on this show,
Yes.
what would be the rebel that you would want to have on this show at some point for you to listen to on your long drive?
I love listening to Michelle Romanow and she's from Calgary or in Calgary. She's a dragon on the Dragon's Den. I think she's got a tremendous amount of wisdom. Same with Arlene Dickinson.
Mm-hmm.
I admire both of them as businesswomen and as women in general.
Yep.
If you can get Barack Obama, I really like him too, and Michelle Obama. But in
Love the
terms
Obamas.
of rebels, that like I love rebels, and so a lot of the people that I admire and follow tend to be people who I call it go where they're not. They go to the spaces where everyone else isn't.
Yeah.
So of course I can't really think of anyone right now.
How about that author that you mentioned?
You know what? Amana Guy is a wonderful business person he lives in Vancouver, has a great business, happy to do an e-intro. I think he's a lovely man, and he's built an incredible business in a very short time, helping, thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs. So I like him too.
What about that author that you mentioned?
Glennon Doyle. Yeah, Glennon Doyle, Untamed. Love her. And Alex Hormozy is the one, the $100 million stuff.
Yeah.
But Glennon Doyle is, do you remember when everybody was all about Eat, Pray, Love?
Yeah.
She's kind of the new version of that. And I still like, that book and that author and her more recent stuff as well. And of course, Brene Brown and her work on dealing with being humans really is what she talks about a lot of. So yeah,
I have a long list.
I know I could give you even more, but yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. My last question. I love all the questions. I love all your answers, and I love your story. And I'm going to be very specific with this question. And normally I leave it pretty open-ended, but if you were to be able to suggest to a 65-year-old woman who's about to go off on a new adventure or is thinking about it, she's like a rebel in waiting, she's just about to take that step, what would be the advice you would give her?
I'm actually in the process right now of working with the documentary producer about creating a documentary about exactly that, called #Not Done by a Long Shot. I would say probably the piece of advice that I would give anyone is the only thing that we regret at the end of our life is typically the things that we didn't do.
Yeah.
Not as many or not as much the things that we did. So it is never too late as long as you're on this side of the dirt. So go for it. Be bold, be brave. And it's really about time to not give a blank what people think, because you spend enough of your life giving your time, your life, your joy away, worrying about that. So basically, go for it.
I love it. Jannette, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for being on this show. This has been lovely.
Thank you. And I so appreciate you giving people space to be seen and heard and supporting rebels everywhere. I think that's awesome.
Thanks, Jannette. Until we meet again.
Yes. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening. I've been your host, Michael Dargie, and this has been the RebelRebel Podcast. It's a podcast for creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. And hey, if you're a rebel or you know a rebel, why don't you head on over to the RebelRebelPodcast.com and fill out our guest request form. We'll get back to you within 24 hours, and maybe we can share your story with the world. Don't forget to like, share, or subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And thanks so much for listening. Until next time.